common denominator, I think, there's a few common denominators between both, and I think it's passion. You have to really, 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 I can't overemphasize that. I think believe in what you've written, and not because you think it's what producers want to hear or what's hot. One of my mentors, one of my favorite phrases, a mentor of mine named Tom Blomquist, who's a writer-producer for many years, and he teaches at Cal State Long Beach now. Trying to figure out what executives want or what the next trend is like trying to hit a moving target. It's just nearly impossible. So I think it's really important that whatever you are pitching, you're passionate about. If it emanates from your area of profession, like if you're a doctor, because I have screenwriter friends who are doctors, and look at Michael Crichton, who was a doctor, with some brilliant ideas that were based on science and medicine. Clearly that was, his passion. So I think that's really important. Just a few, and continuing the overview, a few general guidelines. You don't want to read, and so if anyone's going to read, I would encourage you to, try not to if you haven't memorized your pitch. And that's the other thing. You want it to be more conversational. You can write like a script for yourself, but in my opinion, it's better to be conversational, sort of see where the conversation goes. And the type of pitch we're doing today, is it 5 minutes, Gino?
Yeah, 5 minutes and then 5 minutes to critique.
So 5-minute pitch is actually longer than you'll have, like for example, the Great American Pitch Fest, which is called Script Fest now. I don't know if any of you, has anyone been to that before? Okay, so you generally know. So there, I think you get 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe
No, it was 5.
Oh, it's 5? Okay. But 5-minute pitch is really not a lot of time, and whereas if you're in a studio meeting with an executive or a network executive, development executive, you're going to have, longer, generally 15 minutes, sometimes longer, it depends. But in the 5-minute pitch, you have to really kind of hit the ground running with a hook. Like, you ever wonder what if, or I started out a pitch, I wrote a sci-fi pilot about a town that literally disappeared off the map, and the inspiration was an article I saw that basically said there was a map company that was eliminating small towns under like 500 people or 300 people, whatever it was. And so so I started with that. Do you ever wonder what if, and so that's always a good way, a good hook. And again, you don't want to, you certainly in a pitch for a feature, you want to convey the beginning, middle, and end, but you don't want to, you don't want to read from the script. You don't want to, go into too much detail, but you want to focus on the story and characters. I think that's really the most important thing, especially for a feature. I think story and characters are integral. Same is true for a series, but series is obviously different in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, it could run 5 or 7 years. That's your hope. So you want to have a vision for, is my idea, does it have legs? Like if your idea is something that could carry 100 or more episodes of interesting television, then you want to be able to answer that question. If you're pitching TV, one question an executive might ask is, what do you see season 5 being like? Where do you see these characters evolving? So it's always good to be able to think ahead that far. They won't always ask that. Let's see what else. Any questions so far? I want this to be really informal. So yeah.
But how do you, if it's TV, what you just said, how would you convey all of that in, you're in a 5-minute situation.
Right.
You've got to get up, as you said, character,
That's
story,
right.
trajectory in terms of where all this is going. How do you get all of that in addition with, and over the arc of season 1, Janice will find that she's such and such in our...
That stuff you don't have to worry about until let them ask you those questions. So just to be clear, you want to focus on what the series, and ultimately what the pilot is about, and the concept of the series. I guess, and maybe I wasn't clear, but when they may ask you, well, I love that idea. I don't know if this really carry a series, maybe a mini-series or a feature. What do you see, season 3 looking like? That they might ask you a follow-up question. But you're right. You're limited in time, so you don't want to go into that unless they ask you for a short pitch.
And another question, actually, that you made me think of is, say you're going into this with the hypothesis or thinking that this is definitely a series. This is a 13 or 22 episode per year, with a span of 3 years, whatever. And suddenly, either halfway through or the very end, they go, wow, love this, can see the characters, can see the story, but I see this more as a 3-episode miniseries over 2 hours, 3 consecutive nights. How malleable should you be when you get that, if you're so set on, no, I can really see this playing out over 13 episodes over 5 years or something?
Well, I think you choose your battles carefully. I think if you firmly believe this is a series, you have to sell them. It's really about selling them, not just on your idea, but on you. So they have to have faith in you. So you have to say, I see your point, but I was thinking, this is why I think it has length for, why it has legs to be a series. Because these characters, for example, I just wrote a pilot on Abraham Lincoln's pre-presidential life and law practice in Springfield. And it starts in 1850. And I'm working with a historian, I've done a ton of research, and I have a vision for the series for 5 to 7 years over, ostensibly it'd be over a 10-year period. But I have an image, beginning image of the show is when Lincoln's son Eddie dies in 1850. And the final image for the very last episode I have is when he's waving goodbye to the people of Springfield, teary-eyed on a rainy day in Springfield on a train platform, not knowing he'll never return. But that's that's a historical aspect where I can say he did 5,500 cases over his legal career, and half of those in a 10-year span. So for something that's not based on fact, I think it's a similar concept. You have to tell them why this has more than 3 stories, why this would, why you believe that this would, last 5 seasons. Sell them on it. And ultimately, if they say, well, they want to read, the goal is to get them to read it, right?
Right.
So it's a win, even if they think it's possibly for a miniseries. You'll just, they obviously want to read it at that point.
Okay. So also then translation, what you just said, I should be going in there prepared with every possible missile that could come at me with an answer already formulated as to what they might throw back at me as to this should be a mini-series, this should be only a one special event thing, or you should already have these sort of questions in your mind, what they might throw
Exactly.
at you.
But don't be, don't be defensive. I mean, as writers, and I know it's hard, especially for, I don't know how many of you are newer writers and how many of you are doing it a while, but being able to take notes is extremely important. You will never work if you are overly defensive and refuse to take a note. They will just, goodbye. I mean.
I have a question. Are they taking notes while they're doing this pitch, or we're going to take them back and they can take their notes when we're discussing it? If it's a 5-minute pitch, then they pitch it and then they'll be taking the notes, or what?
Oh, whatever everyone wants to do. I don't know.
I'm just saying that somebody had asked me about that, how are they going to write when they're pitching? I just thought if
Oh,
we pitch it and then if we give them 5 minutes to pitch and 5 minutes
Give
to
them feedback
evaluate.
after, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Neil, seeing you're the first one up and you're the one with questions, why don't we put you in the hot seat?
Well, let him go on, because I might have a couple more questions.
And what I mentioned earlier, you're not only selling your story, you're selling yourself. Especially for it's like a TV series, because for a movie, they can buy your script and then just jettison you and hire someone to do rewrites. But a series, they're stuck with you because you're the creator. I mean, they could ultimately buy it from you, but you get co-creator credit or creator credit, but you want to be, you want to be likable. You want to be that person they want to work with 12 hours a day in a room, and not, and not someone that they're going to run from. In terms of taking notes, like if they give you ideas, I think you'd be receptive, and if it's something that's a completely different direction, you can defend why you made that creative choice. But I think it's important to have an open mind, especially if they're receptive to material and have ideas, different spins. Don't automatically, reject that. You got a question, sir?
So in theory, or from a business point of view, you'd be better off with pitching a TV project than a film.
Well, yeah, in terms of long-term employment, I mean, either way, it's a tough business. But a feature is kind of a one-off. I mean, hopefully if the feature's successful and the financiers or producers will want to work with you again and hire you to write something else. But certainly a TV series.
Well, certainly there's a lot more business going on right now in TV than there is in movies.
Yeah, I mean, look at a lot of feature writers have gravitated over to the TV world. In fact, there's so many TV shows. There's a lack of showrunners. I hear they can't find showrunners to run like all these shows because it's almost like an embarrassment of riches. It's pretty great.
It might help to narrow the field if you sort of really know who you're pitching to. Like, are you pitching to 20th Century Fox or Netflix or Hulu or something? You've got to really know because you get to know what they want. And you should weed out some of these people, not waste your time pitching to them.
That's exactly right. You have to do
They're
your
looking
homework.
for, male-oriented action drama, and you've got something that's a love story, and they're like,
And Great American Pitch Fest does put out a book where they tell you what they're looking for. So, and I always recommend, and I've been on both sides, and years ago I pitched at these events, and you want to maybe start out with not your top companies, like when you're first doing these events, maybe because you want to get into a groove, right? So maybe pick a company that's not your top choice, maybe even pitching to a manager or agent, potential manager or agent, sort of to get the kinks out. And then you feel like you're getting up to speed and you're getting command of what you want to do, and then go save the bigger ones for later, unless you're supremely confident to begin with. But you definitely want to rehearse it. And like I said, you can write something down, write notes, but just do not read. I can't urge that enough because they'll tune out, eyes will glaze over. They're already thinking about, like, oh, did I have someone, walking my dog today, and what time I have that meeting? I mean, you want to keep them focused on you. You want to have them so enthralled by what you're telling them that they can't think of anything else. And also, you want to leave them wanting more. And I moderated a Q&A a couple of years back with David Nutter, who's an Emmy-winning director, who's a fellow alum from the University of Miami. I'm friendly with him, and he said, like in a pilot, when he produces a pilot, directs a pilot, his goal is to, and working with the writer, wants to leave them wanting more, so that they want to watch beyond the first episode. And I think that's also your goal as a salesperson. You want to leave them with questions, wanting more, knowing, wow, this is great, I want to read this, I want to see your Bible. That's another thing. And how many of you have done TV, have written Bibles? Yeah, so I just did, and they're really important, and they take a lot of time, but they're such an important sales tool, in my opinion. I do them for every series that I pitch, and especially ones that require a lot of, especially like on the Lincoln Project, it was a lot of research, but it was, I think, ultimately worth it.